on behalf of the Commission for Professors of Adult Education of the American Association for Adult and Continuing Education, we'd like to welcome you to this seminar focusing on adult education in higher education, program sustainability and growth. I'm Susan Yelich-Binyetsky. I'm an associate professor with Kansas State University. And so I will be serving as one of your moderators and in the background checking the chat. Steve Schmidt, a professor at East Carolina University, will be serving as the moderator of the panel. And I'd like to welcome our panelists today and thank them for their time of contributing to this discussion. We have Simone Conceição, who's a professor at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Simone, you can wave there. Joellen Coriel, professor at Texas State University. Paulette Isaac Savage, professor at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. And Leanne Kaiser, associate professor at Colorado State University. We do have one announcement from one of my colleagues. Jelena Alston are you ready to make an announcement about, before we start our panel discussion, about another initiative that CPAE has to continue this conversation afterwards?
Yes. Good afternoon, colleagues. Great to virtually engage with each of you. We are very excited to announce that on Monday, May 10th, there will be a new CPAE discussion forum, right? We felt like it was really important for us to get to know each other or reacquaint with each other. And we want to know, what are your interests? What are some of the things that you're working on? What do you want to work on? Are you interested in identifying potential collaborators, right? We feel that we have not engaged with each other and as we typically, we're used to. And we believe that perhaps there are some things that we don't know about each other, right? And so soon you will receive information about it. But we want you to share some information about what are some of the scholarship areas that you're working in. Either you've worked in the past, you're currently working on, or are you looking to pivot in those areas? And that way you can identify people who have similar interests. How are you engaging in a community, right? That's really big and important for us, especially as adult educators. And so we just want this to be a space where we can commune virtually and share and exchange with each other. So be on the lookout for that. We're excited and we hope that you engage and participate. And I hope you enjoy the webinar.
Thank you, Jelena. So look out for that announcement as well. And we'll loop back around to that at the end of the webinar. So at this point, I will turn things over to Steve Schmidt to get our session started.
All right, thank you, Susan. Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Schmidt, and I'm a professor of adult education at East Carolina University. And Susan, as she mentioned, is the chair of CPAE, and I'm the former chair, the most immediate, I guess, past chair is what my title is. But so she and I are working together on facilitating, moderating the panel discussion. And so between the two of us, we hope that we can make this a good experience for you and an experience that you can learn things that you may be able to take into your programs and use in your programs right away, because we know these topics aren't things that we aren't things that we can just talk about. They're things that we talk about, but then, if we want our programs to grow and be sustainable, we have to take action. And that's such a key point of this all. So we hope this discussion today will spur some of you on to make changes and continuously improve your programs. And as Jelena was mentioning, this is only one piece of the puzzle, because this conversation is one that we should be having on an ongoing basis. And so with the forum that Jelena talked about, we'll be able to continue the discussion. So again, I welcome all of you, and it's great to see so many of you here today. What I'd like to do is for our four panelists, to have you start out by just talking a little bit about yourself, your experience in adult education, and your role in your programs. So a little bit about your programs and yourselves, and that we can use as a basis for getting the discussion going. So Paulette, would you like to start, since you're right next to me on my screen here? So
I'm so glad I'm so close to you, Steve.
So we're standing next to each other, yes.
Well, welcome everyone. I'm so glad that you all were able to join this, I think, very important discussion. So as mentioned, I'm a professor of adult education at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. I've been there almost 22 years now. And at one point we had a very thriving program, and basically I am a program or department of one. And as I was sharing with some others earlier, and that basically our program exists on paper. And so we do not accept any students for the master's program at all. I recently accepted a student for the doctoral program, but again, basically our program does not exist. Also at the university, I've served as a department chair and then as an associate provost, where I have responsibilities for assessment, accreditation, and some other things. I did the job of about 4 people. Now my responsibilities have been allocated to about 4 or 5 different people. But anyway, I'm looking forward to this, to our discussion today, to share some ideas which will help us to maintain and sustain our programs. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Paulette. Simone, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, and welcome, everybody. I'm Simone Conceição, and I'm with the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee School of Education. I have worked for the university for about 29 years, but in the role of a faculty member for 19 years. So it's been a long time coming. And so I have been a program coordinator, and currently I'm the chair of my department. And I've been the chair for, I don't even remember, but maybe 5 years or more. And of course, I have had all kinds of roles within the university in different committees in the School of Ed. I've been involved in many committees in which we have like a distance education committee, or being involved in the technology committee on campus. We recently had a 2026 task force that I was the chair. So I've been involved in many things that require action, leadership, and which have been very helpful within our program. The adult education program has been in existence for over 50 years. Couldn't pinpoint the exact year that it started, but it's been a long time. It has evolved. And most recently, we merged with the Higher Education Administration program. And I will say more about the mergers later, but to give you an idea what it is. And I'm a full professor in the department.
Okay, thank you, Simone. Leanne, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you, Steve. Welcome, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled to see everybody. My name is Dr. Leanne Kaiser. I'm an associate professor at Colorado State University. Our program, our adult education program, is a master's program. We offer that fully online and fully on campus. The program itself has been around, again, like Simone, I can't pinpoint the date, but at some point in the late 80s or so is when that started. And then our online program began about 20 years ago. So I've been with CSU now. This is my 13th year there. In addition to regular sort of faculty roles within our adult education program, I've also served as the co-coordinator along with 2 of my colleagues of our master's program. I know that's not what we're talking about today, but if you want to ever talk about co-coordination, there's some really powerful things there. Let's see here, as is the norm with most people and most adult education programs, we have certainly had ebbs and flows over the time that we've been in existence, particularly in terms of student numbers and as well as faculty numbers. Just in my 13 years, we've been as low as 2 permanent faculty members, full-time faculty members, and as high as 6. And there's been fluctuation as well on the number of those roles that were a tenure track and that were contingent or non-tenure track roles as well. Yeah, so that's a little bit about my program.
All right, thank you, Leanne. And Joellen, would you tell us a little bit about you and your program?
Sure. Hey, everybody. It's really nice to see you all, particularly during this very strange time. I miss our conference gatherings and our networking, and particularly those wine evenings, which, as many of you know, I enjoy tremendously. So So it's really good to see you. My name is Joellen Coriel, and I am a professor of the Master's and Doctoral Program at Texas State, and our title of our program is Adult Professional and Community Education. I also, as of a couple of years ago, serve as Assistant Dean for Educational Partnerships and Enrollment in the College of Education here at Texas State. Our doctoral program has been in, this is our 20th year, so we'll be celebrating big time next school year. And I am happy to see a number of our graduates, our alums on board. So great to see you all, and, and happy to see that you're doing well. In my career, I think probably I'm best thinking through this as in my current role as Assistant Dean for Partnerships and Enrollment, because that kind of connects nicely with the topic today. But I have served as the Master's Program Coordinator in 2 different universities, first at UT San Antonio and now at Texas State, and then also as the PhD Program Coordinator. So I've had some interesting experiences always working on program sustainability and enrollments and recruiting. And I always wondered as a professor, well, I wondered about a lot of things when I became a professor, like what we're supposed to know and how we're supposed to know it. But one of the things that always surprised me as a coordinator is, the undergraduate programs in universities, the model generally is that marketing and recruitment and enrollment falls on the shoulders of university administrators. There's a whole department for this. But for graduate programs, the onus tends to fall on the program coordinator. And I always wondered, well, where do we get that knowledge? How do we become good at that? And so I think this conversation is really, really valuable. I wish I would have had it 10, 15 years ago when I first started as a coordinator, but I'm really happy to be here. So hello, everybody, and I look forward to our conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joellen. All right, so so all of you can see when each of these panelists introduce themselves. When we were putting this panel together, we wanted people to be panelists who had a wide variety of experience, both in their programs and in higher level leadership roles in their colleges or schools or universities in general. And because there's so much that has to do with sustainability and growth that we control at the program level, but there's a lot of stuff that goes on at higher levels that is important for us to know about too, as Joellen mentioned. So hopefully all of you who are here participating will have noticed that the great experience that so many people here have had hopefully will make this a really rich conversation. So thanks to all of you for your opening, your introductions. No, I'd like to talk a little bit about, each of you can talk a little bit about program sustainability and growth in your specific programs, maybe lessons you've learned or big things when you hear those terms, sustainability and growth. What do you think about in relation to your programs, or things that you have seen other programs do that you think is important for attendees to know about? Again, with regards to sustainability and also growth.
Well, I'll get us started. As it relates to sustainability, I think one of the important things is hiring great faculty or good faculty. So hiring individuals that you know who are going to get tenure and promotion, have a very good chance of getting tenure and promotion. So with my program in particular, we were really challenged with that. So when I started in '99, another colleague joined me, and unfortunately she did not get tenure and promotion. We were able to fill her position, but then the person that we hired did not receive tenure promotion. And in fact, she ended up resigning and going back to her home country. And so that really put a hole in the program and left me again, basically as a one-woman program. The dean at the time was not in favor of hiring a new faculty member. And I think that's one of the challenges too, is that we have these deans who are so teacher ed focused, and we have to help them to broaden their own perspective about education. So again, one of the most important things I think is hiring the right faculty for your program, because if the faculty are there, then they cannot fire them in essence. And so that will help you to sustain your program. So that would be one answer to your question.
Okay, great. Thank you, Paulette.
I can go next. So we have a very, we have a program that has been in existence for a long time in adult in continuing education, but for a while enrollments were, going down and in the department. So we also brought in higher education administration. But we decided to take a strategic step and do a market analysis and to see what was going on in terms of adult education programs in the country. We found about 10 programs that had adult education and higher education, and we decided to merge both programs. And at the same time, we started offering our program online. I know some of our faculty were sort of concerned with bringing the adult ed with the higher ed. And one of my colleagues who is in this webinar knows that. He used to call kudzu. He was afraid that, higher ed would take over adult ed and we wouldn't have an adult ed program, but we were very strategic. We kept the name adult ed in the beginning of the title, Adult Continuing and Higher Education Administration. Also, most of the courses were in adult education. So a lot of the skills were there, and we only have like 5 courses in higher education. But the merger worked really, really well. And we started offering totally online courses. The program is totally online for over 15 years. We also added other things. We added certificate programs. So the certificate programs, one was in teaching and learning in higher education, and the other one support services for online students in higher education. And we allowed students to do 2-in-1, the master's degree and the certificate at the same time, and the courses would all double count. So that was a huge, way of keep alive and grow. We also, adult ed is very broad. How do you make it that it's not too broad? So we customize the program. A student can come in and decide, I want to go into the adult ed track or the higher ed track. But they can take courses in both areas, or they can do the certificate that would customize the program for that student for the specific skills. So we do it very customizable, and students can also take courses from other departments. We have also created collaborations with other units on campus, like nursing, College of Health Sciences, labor relations in the School of Business, where students would take courses from us as part of their either certificate or program. We have a certificate in health education. So it involves nursing, health sciences, and education. So the other thing, most recently, the College of Nursing created a nursing educator track. So again, it's another collaboration, and we always have students in our courses from areas all over campus. We also have a PhD program, but it's part of a multidisciplinary PhD, an urban education doctoral program. So all those things helped us stay alive. We have other areas in marketing that helped us keep telling our stories to other people who might be interested in our program. One of the biggest issues for adult education is that people don't understand what adult education is. And so you have to educate them. So we do through social media. We use our alumni as, to talk about what they do. And we explain what adult education is about. We post in Facebook, Instagram, and other areas. LinkedIn, we want to keep it alive. We also have an alumni task force that has been super helpful with us. So this all helps us. All these strategies help us stay alive and continue our trajectory in education.
Thanks, Simone. Leanne, could I ask you to go next? And then I'd like to kind of tie a theme into what Joellen said earlier, and then ask you to comment on this, Joellen. So Leanne, could you go next?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have kind of 3 main ideas to talk about, and don't worry, they're not too long, about how kind of to reimagine how we offer education to our students. And of course, these are meant as ways to have that sustainability and growth that we're talking about. But I think even more importantly, these are sorts of ideas that can position adult ed as a leader in the changing landscape of higher ed. There is absolutely no denying that higher ed is not what it used to be. And some people are struggling in this middle space. And that I think is one of the key things, that adult ed can be a leader in that changing landscape. I mean, that's a key to sustainability and growth. So 3 different things. Simone slightly touched on some of these, but I don't think it hurts to hear emphasis on areas. So the first idea, and I want to pull back and say these are not necessarily things that we are doing at Colorado State right now. They are things that we are exploring and that we see as important down the road. So just to be clear about that. So the first one is a need to explore other ways to offer adult educators what they need. A vast majority of our students, and I'm sure at your institutions as well, are already adult educators. And traditional university format, semester-long sort of courses, it just doesn't work. And a lot of these students, quite honestly, don't even need a full degree. So looking at things like, and this is not new for some folks, but for some it is, how can we offer our courses in a way that fits the adults? We obviously in adult ed have done a good job for a long time on the online piece. We were innovators and pioneers in that. But how else can we be offering these things in compressed formats, accelerated formats, weekend intensives, those sorts of things? More and more we hear in our program, our students saying, this is great, I can't commit 16 weeks to taking a 3 credit class and then do that for the next 3 years. It's just not sustainable. Also looking at things like I mentioned, students who are not necessarily interested in gaining an entire degree, micro-credentialing, certifications and things like that. Prior learning assessment is not new. That's something we talk about, but it's something that we've struggled with for a long time in a lot of institutions to get traction on. So being able to have students bring in that work experience for credit. Those are things we really should continue to push forward on. I think right now is a good time to talk about these sorts of things because the world is quite honestly primed to do education in a new way. There's been so much upheaval in the past year and a half that oftentimes that's the time when these sorts of changes get a little bit more attention and a little bit more traction in institutions that don't change very quickly, that don't turn that ship around very quickly. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't still maintain, more traditional master's and doctoral programs with your full semesters and things like that. But these other sort of initiatives could then support those. They could be the foundation, the financial support. So we could still sustain those more traditional master's and graduate and doctoral programs. So that's one idea. The second idea, this is the one I had mentioned Simone had touched on, and she has some good experience in Wisconsin, is looking more at joint programs. Paulette mentioned she is a department of one, a program of one. She can't be everything to everyone. So this can be very attractive when we have, as many of our adult programs are, very limited faculty. So maybe, and I'm not talking about just collaboration within an institution, but between institutions, where courses are taken in core sort of areas at a student's home institution, but then they can really go out and focus on literacy education, military education, health education, whatever it may be, for institutions that have the faculty that have that expertise. And whether this becomes a transfer course situation, a dual degree, those are the sorts of things and those are the sorts of opportunities that we need to be paying attention to and working on a little bit more. And then finally, my third idea, the vast majority of us teach in graduate level programs. This does not mean that the world of adult ed does not translate into undergraduate programs as well. Programs that offer solely graduate education are becoming more and more difficult to sustain in higher ed. I know at our institution, we only have the graduate level, and we're often told how that's not a sustainable, you don't have that strong undergraduate foundation. Sometimes that's a revenue situation, right? But also that these are, that feeds into the graduate level program as well to be able to sustain it. So that I think is something that has been largely, not 100%, but largely ignored across a lot of adult ed, and something that needs to be given a little bit more attention. So these ideas aren't mutually exclusive. A lot of these three sort of integrate with each other. but just some unique ways to kind of think about how to reposition adult ed to thrive in and to be leaders in a new changing adult ed landscape and higher ed landscape.
Yep. Okay, good. Thank you, Leanne. Good. So, Joellen, I not to put you on the spot, but you said something earlier, and as Paulette and Simone and Leanne were talking, I was thinking this kind of all relates to each other. It all relates. And that is the idea that most of us, when we come out of our doc programs or our graduate programs, we understand the idea of research, and we understand teaching, and we understand service, those types of things, and we learn how to do those things. But when it comes down to program sustainability and growth, we need to have skills like looking at things strategically and how to plan to meet the needs of our learners and how to manage our programs and how to be proactive in administration related types of things and how to help move our programs ahead. And we don't necessarily know how to do that coming in as new faculty. So I'll ask you to kind of comment on that, because you talked about that earlier, Joelle, on the fact that, the skills we get in our doc programs are all helpful, but in order for us to be advocates for our programs and help them to sustain and grow, we need more than that. And so just your thoughts and comments on that, because I found that to be the case as well. And it sounds like Paulette and Simone and Leanne have too.
Sure. So I can't say that, my progression was flawless. It certainly wasn't. But I did come into adult ed, as many of us do, sort of in a non-traditional way. So I didn't immediately go into a master's program in adult ed. In fact, my master's is not in adult ed. My master's was actually in education, in curriculum and instruction. But when I had some experience in management and in sales, a lot, actually a whole career in that prior to going back and getting my master's and then doctorate degree. And so I had to call on previous experiences of working with other people, in managing other people, in advertising. Although I wasn't responsible for that, I had to think about how does that translate into universities. And I appreciate what Leanne said a lot in terms of how universities do not change direction quickly at all. In fact, that was one of the biggest flashes of what is going on here moments for me when I moved to universities as a faculty member and recognized the fact that, man, things go really slowly. And so I think the advice that I would give to faculty who are new, but also who are continuing programs and are focusing, I guess, on sustainability, is that we as adult educators and adult education faculty have a lot to offer, and we are really very, very good at understanding organization and change and development and faculty development. And we become really relevant when people know that about us. One of the things that I think is really important, and it does take away our time from our research and teaching, but those service engagements that we end up getting in, like being on committees that are cross disciplinary, that are across the college, and getting to have, starting to have relationships with others in the university helps keep us in the know, and also keeps our program as being relevant to the university as well as relevant to outside organizations. So I think that creating those relationships across disciplines, across programs, and across university has been particularly valuable for those of us in the program that I'm currently in. And not everybody wants to do that, and I get it, but frankly, it's kind of dog eat dog out there right now, particularly for enrollments and for staying relevant. And I think that remaining relevant to the university as well as to the community and students that we serve is really, really important as we move forward. I will say that the master's and the doctoral program at Texas State, we are among the top 2 most enrolled and most successful doctoral programs in the university, which helps because that's really helpful. What we're not is we do not have a lot of enrollments in our master's program, and I could go into a whole lot of reasons why that is. But we have done a lot of program development in order to stay relevant, to stay connected with needs, and to redesign ourselves in many ways, if you will. So the master's program changed its name to fit the adult professional community education name of the doctoral program. We have one concentration that's fully online now, which we didn't have a number of years ago. We were the first in the college to put a program fully online. But the doctoral program also changed. So when it was first conceived by our beloved Jovita Ross Gordon, it was a combination program between adult ed and school improvement, which is really the ed leadership focus for doctoral students. And about 10 years into it, there was a breaking of that idea into two more self-sustaining programs. And that was valuable because that's what needed to happen at the time. The curriculum needed to change. We needed to connect more with what our community needed, both from the adult ed side and the ed leadership side. And so being open to those changes, and now with everything that has changed over the last year, everybody needs to be thinking about what Leanne was talking about, and actually what all of you have been talking about in terms of what do we do now to stay connected, to stay relevant, and to stay fresh. And I think that that's really important. Steve, I don't know that I responded specifically to your question in terms of learning about. I want to go back to that just briefly in terms of learning how to coordinate it. The things that became very important was to find out those people who really knew what they were doing and then connect and then link to them. And so when I started to realize people who were coordinating other programs and seemed to really know what was going on, I asked to be a part of their circle. I asked to learn from them. I also had no problem reaching out to administration really early and saying, hey, I'm new, but this is really interesting to me. Can we talk? And so, I took so many people to lunch or we met for coffee because I wanted to learn more about my job through their eyes. And I wanted to see what they knew about adult ed, which generally wasn't very much. And so this was an opportunity for me to tell that, for me to help market internally our programs, which I think has been really particularly valuable. So I think it's still on the job training, and I don't know that I would spend a lot of time in a doc program necessarily working on higher education coordination skills, because lots of our students don't go into don't go become professors. Many do, but not all. But I do think that there's something around program development and program management that we could be thinking about that could have a component that was connected with higher ed, perhaps.
Okay. Yep, good. Thank you. Yeah, that's
I have a comment.
Good comments. Yes, go ahead, Simone.
Okay, so I actually feel like I'm a graduate from our master's degree in adult and continuing education leadership. So the department focuses on administrative leadership. I feel like I got a lot of skills from the program because we learn about adult learners, who is our audience. We learn about program planning. We learn about leadership. We learn about all these areas. So I gained the skills from that. But I started at the university as a secretary. And I knew all the connections and the interconnections within the university. And of course, I have great mentors. So as our colleagues start retiring, we also have to be strategic and train others to take on the role so the program doesn't die or is sustainable. And I'm going through that right now because I'm retiring at the end of June. Might be a surprise for some of you. And I had the opportunity to get somebody else to come to our department and to train people to continue our program. And it's very strong. And of course, we created this connection between adult ed and higher ed. And we all think like adult educators. One person who is from higher education also has a minor in adult ed. And our purely higher ed person is an adult educator by heart, by experience. So you have to be strategic who you hire, how the program the focus of the program and how to move that forward. But the other thing is that integrate faculty into major committees within your school. So if decisions are made, you are there and you have a voice. So, or have them have leadership positions. A while ago in our department, we had a member of our department who became the chair of the curriculum committee, or somebody was in the doctoral committee. You know, so we have a voice and we can explain who we are and move forward, come up with the strategies. Most of the time, people in our department get things done. And with all that's going on with the pandemic, people had to move everything online. We were ready. We didn't have to waste time planning, you know, or learning how to use the technology or the pedagogy to teach online. So I think we've been ahead of the curve in comparison to other people in the school. But at the same time, you have to be strategic so you don't die, you continue growing. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, great. Paulette or Leanne, any comments, anything to add in relation to the topics that we've been discussing?
Yeah, so something that certainly comes to mind and what I've heard my colleagues talk about basically is building relationships. Cannot emphasize that enough. You know, Simone talked about, and so did Joellen, well, all three of them rather, about, you know, having meetings with people, getting to know people, taking people out for coffee. I can't emphasize that enough. Building relationships, not just within your college, but across campus. And it's also important to, you know, talk to people about including your curriculum in their curriculum. At one point with our Master's in Adult and Higher Education program, the College of Nursing offered a nursing education program, or nursing educator program, I should say. And so one of their requirements was our foundational adult education course. And they decided to change that program and then as a result eliminated that course. But that would be an example though of how you can collaborate with another college or another department. In fact, I had started having some conversations with our communication department to see about offering an adult education course that some of their students could take, because actually some of them were taking our courses back in the day. And so again, I think building those relationships is something that we have to do to help sustain our programs.
Okay, good, thank you. Leanne, any comments or?
Just real briefly, I want to re-emphasize the importance of adult ed being in the room, quote unquote. You know, I think it was Joellen that mentioned, and we all know this, that we always have to explain what adult ed is. And it's not just that, it's also explaining the perspective of adult ed in a situation. So just as one example that just came up for us this week, there was a committee in our college working on some college level grants, some internal grants. And some of the units in our college are pretty hard science based. We have a very broad college. And then being able to come in and translate some of the more teaching related and adult ed related grants to this committee became key. We had an adult ed person on that committee, and ended up that a couple of our adult ed folks did end up getting those grants, but they wouldn't have if we weren't there, if we weren't at the table. And so that's just one piece of it, but the more that we are a part of conversations outside of just our own departments and our own units, that's one of the best ways, I think, to kind of overcome the, oh, nobody knows about me. And I do understand that's hard. A lot of us really get involved in our very narrow area. This is who I'm teaching. These are my students. These are my advisees. This is my research. And I don't want to move outside of that. Going back to the main theme of this, that's not sustainable. That might keep you your job. It might not keep your program though.
Good. Thank you, Leanne. Good. So all of you have had done some really, or have talked about some really good examples of how you've developed partnerships and connections and networks. So if you're somebody who's at this webinar and you want to start developing a partnership, how do you go about, you know, if you're in an adult ed program at a particular college university, how do you start? How do you start developing these partnership programs, these partnerships that may lead to these good initiatives that all of you have talked about?
Well, I think that one of the things that people can do, as has been mentioned, is serving on committees and building relationships that way. And also looking at other departments, looking at their course offerings, and then just reaching out to those people, reaching across the table, if you will, to make that suggestion. Well, we offer this course and maybe your department might find it helpful for some of your students. But I think just initiating that conversation, because if we wait for people to come to us, I don't think that's going to happen. So we have to be the initiators in this case and make that contact with those individuals. It could be with the faculty member. And I'm assuming that in most cases, people participate in a new faculty orientation. So maybe starting there, building a relationship with somebody in your new faculty orientation, reaching out to that individual. And again, making some suggestions, helping them to understand what adult education is and how we can benefit them. Maybe again, we have some courses that we can offer their students that their students may find very helpful. But that would be one suggestion that I have, though, building relationships that way.
Another way to build relationship is being in doctoral committees in other units, other colleges. Because those students might be taking courses with us. They will take it back and saying, this is what I learned. This is great. I would like to take more courses in adult education. Another way is be part of grants. I've been invited to be on a co-PI of grants. And that way, during the grant writing, even though the grant may have not come through, but during the process of writing the grant and discussing, it was a way to create relationships and learn about each other. That has happened recently. So there, like Paulette said, get involved, build relationships, get your name out. One way of getting yourself known.
Mm-hmm. Stephen, I would like to interject something there too. Another thing that people can consider doing is presenting at your institution. So if there's an opportunity for a new faculty presentation or something like that, or whatever the situation may be, take advantage of that, because that's how we can help educate people about adult education. And so that's something I would strongly encourage people to do. Maybe there's a research seminar or something like that that may be going on at your institution. Take advantage of that. Again, so that does two things. One, it gets the word out about our program, but then it also helps people to get to know you as well.
So go ahead.
There's a couple of questions that I wanted to bring in, if I could, at this point, that are in the chat. One is just a comment that this is a very positive, proactive conversation that I think people can grab pieces onto and use in their own practice. A specific question, and then there's a couple other ones, but can you talk about how the pandemic has affected your program in terms of funding and staffing? So we've talked about some, big picture kind of things about sustainability and growth, but can you hone in on how the pandemic has affected your program? And I know for some of us, well, for all of us, as the data comes in, we kind of reassess and modify. But what do things look like at this point? Could you comment on that?
I'll let one
comment a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So I can only speak obviously for Texas State, but I can say that when the pandemic hit and we all went fully online, and we are very, we have a beautiful campus, and the focus was on undergraduates, quite frankly, and it always has been, and it probably will continue that way. But what ended up happening was a huge fear of much lower enrollments. And so, which means in the state of Texas, at least for public institutions, much lower budgets, because our budgets are driven very, very specifically by tuition dollars and fees and that kind of thing connected with enrollments. So we went into a hiring freeze that actually only somewhat lifted even now. The university offered retirement packages, early retirement packages. I can say that our program in adult ed, thankfully, was not affected by by a loss of a faculty member, which we would not have been able to rehire at this point. We had been in a search. We actually searched for two new faculty, and they were hired prior to the beginning of the pandemic, so that was thankful. But some of the how do I say this? It doesn't look like we're going to get another faculty member for a while, even though we've been asking for one for a good while, given the strength of our doctoral program. I will say also that we had to deal with some issues in the department as well as in our program for international faculty that had just been hired and couldn't get here. So our university, for a while, I wondered what was going to happen. I thought maybe that they wouldn't be able to actually follow through with the hiring, but our university administration and our legal people were really, really strongly advocates for this to happen. And so we've worked that out, and one of them has actually arrived in, and the other one I think is going to arrive a little later. It has hurt our international enrollments, however. The pandemic has really sincerely affected that and some of the political stances of the previous administration, of course, as well. So from that standpoint, it's been tough. And I think that the pandemic realities in terms of staffing, as well as in terms of delivery of our programs across the board, not just in adult ed, are being challenged right now to figure things out in ways that are more effective in terms of cost, and enrollments have to really be at those levels. We're not able to really make many exceptions, for lower enrolled classes like we used to be. So we have to, and I know it sounds like, oh, well, now she's the assistant dean for partnerships and enrollment. Really, it's enrollment. And so she always only talks about enrollment, but the reality is we don't get what we want if we don't have the students in our classes and in our programs. We just are not going to get the things that we need to maintain sustainable. So I have some ideas around enrollment management that we can talk about if you're interested, but that's how we've done it. I think Simone also has some stuff to offer.
So in our case, I have mentioned I'm retiring, but I made a decision based on several things, and it is through incentive. There is an incentive right now for people to retire, but only people who were eligible or the school approved that, and the school approved my potential retirement. And I calculated, we had somebody moving from an educational policy and community studies to our department, and that person had a background in adult ed, was doing community engagement, service learning, was doing a lot of things that we do. So it was a really good match. But also, it's very important. The other thing related to what Joellen is saying is that we've been very strategic about which courses to offer. So those courses have plenty of enrollment. So because if you start having a bunch of courses and they don't fill up, they're going to say, oh, your course is not good. You don't have the enrollment. So we have been very strategic. Our summer enrollment is high now, but we removed a few of the courses that would take enrollment from other courses. So we've been very strategic. Second, regarding hiring people, because there is this freeze, because we got one person, so we were okay, because my position is probably gone, but then we got a new one through transfer. But also when we are hiring positions within the department, we are trying to hire with another department, which is a good way to, create partnerships. And one case, we were going to hire somebody that person could also be part of another PhD program. It wasn't related to adult ed, but it's a suggestion when you want to hire someone, maybe hire in collaboration with other departments, because then you are justifying your hiring. You're bringing one person that could serve different areas. And that may happen in the future because we don't know where colleges and departments, will be in the future. Are we going to have departments or are we going to have programs? Those are all questions that are, being talked about. We are also this summer, the school will be talking about program sustainability. What are the criteria to consider a program that's sustainable, that can stay? So that's where the conversation is going next.
Okay, good. Thank you, Simone. One thing so many good ideas here with regard to how do you keep things going, and how do you make sure your programs are sustainable. And as all you were talking, I was thinking it's so important, as Joellen said, to make sure you have the credit hours and make sure you have the students for the courses, and make sure that your numbers are good. But then the second piece of it is making sure that those who approve the positions know that you want somebody, and keep going. You know, the squeaky wheel gets the oil in a lot of cases, I think. So, you know, like my department chair, when we had open positions and when we have them in other programs, she meets with the dean every month. And there's not a month that goes by when she doesn't say, well, what about this position? Well, what about that position? So making sure that people remember you too, I think is so important. Reminding people that you have the numbers, and, you know, when the positions become available, you know, what about us? What about us? What about us?
Steve, that leads to one of the other questions that's actually on the chat. That's a good bridge to this. So there's also a question about, have any of you been contacted by administration, enrollment management? Some of you are in enrollment management, as you know, to consult you as the adult education expert about the growing adult learner population on campus, and how you can contribute your expertise to that? Or is it, as Paulette was mentioning earlier, that you are the ones that need to go, you know, to an administrator or to another program area to talk about how you can inform another program or give your expertise? Can you talk about that?
I know I personally have not been approached about that.
I have been approached related to online education, because online education is my expertise. So I have been approached about being part of the online program council. And so this council meets once a month, and we share information, and it's a great place to discuss. And we continue doing that via Zoom or Teams during the year. So that was a great opportunity to talk about those items. And we would have people from all areas, graduate school, enrollment services, that would involve enrollment or creating new programs, looking at different strategies. So that has been one place to be approached. And also I'm consulted often about online education and adult learners on campus because of my expertise with somebody who works at the provost's office and is the executive director for online education on campus. So based on my expertise, I've been approached, but we also have to be at the table. And sometimes when we are not, I will send a message to someone, we don't have a representation. And of course, they wanted me to be the representative sometimes because I sent a message. But then if I feel like somebody else will be better, I will recommend that person. For example, the university had a think tank talking about what's going to happen. You know, are we going to have mergers? They wanted recommendations. And we did not have a representative from the School of Ed. So I wrote to the provost and I said, I noticed you don't have a representative. So of course he invited me, and I said, well, I already knew I was retiring. I didn't feel it was fair for me to be in that committee. So, but my co-chair in the task force for the school was the member. So we gained a space, and we could, through the task force, we could influence decisions for the main all university implementation team. So I think that's the way you want to infiltrate yourself, integrate a faculty member into the fabric of the university.
I just want to add that I found at my institution that there have been times I've reached out for things exactly as Simone is mentioning, but if I or somebody else within my program isn't already known, it's hard to get that door open to us. So these often already have to be established relationships in order for people to trust you enough to say, yes, I understand that you have this expertise that you can lend to this, which Yeah, which Simone has, and obviously in her time that she's been at her institution and in her position. I also want to emphasize that this is a really nice illustration of what I was mentioning before, of not just living within your little, here's what I research and what I do, but taking that and using it for other areas, and in Simone's case, in the online education space. We've had a little bit of success, a little bit of this, reaching out to other areas. In terms of especially working with like graduate assistants and graduate teaching assistants across campus. Really what they're doing in a lot of cases is adult education, but they're doing without any sort of training or background. So we've started to make some inroads into that. So it's not exactly the adult learner population that the question was asking about, but looking at it in a different sort of population that exists on every campus. So you have a teaching assistant who, you know, does an anatomy lab. They have no idea how to facilitate that. They can come to us, and, you know, there's been times where we've done workshops. Sometimes there's some programs that have chosen to add a course or two of ours to theirs, and things like that. So
I'll just add that I've been with a university who's had a master's and a doctoral program for 20 years in adult professional community education, that only until I ended up in administration and asked to be a part of certain committees or task force and that kind of thing, because of my role, am I able to provide information about what it's like for adult learners and what we need to be thinking about. So while we're very well known to administration, you know, sometimes the way I look at universities is that there's the business side and there's the academic side, and they don't often talk. And so when you've got business functions that are working toward things like enrollment and you know trying to get students in, that it doesn't necessarily translate that there may be some expertise over here in College of Education that could be very helpful. So our university right now is very focused on transfer students from community colleges. Now, this doesn't go into adult ed because, like Leanne says, we don't have an undergraduate component in adult ed, but we're very interested in getting you know, students that are in community colleges transferred into four-year institutions across the state, and we, of course, Texas State wants them to come to us. Well, you know, it's kind of like the term lifelong learning that everybody has their dog has decided to co-op in, because they seem like they know what that means when they don't necessarily know what that means. It's like, adult students, oh yeah, you know, that they're living, I hear they're living adult lives, they're busy adult lives. And I'm like, yeah, well, what does that mean for translation into their experiences into programs that are at the undergraduate level or even at the master's and doctoral level? And that's when people are like, well, I don't know, they're adults, they can figure it out. So you do have to really, I think we really do have to continually jump in and engage and let people know what our expertise is and how we can help this process in really, you know, in really profound ways, in researched ways, and from a discipline that's ready for it, or ready for this kind of challenge.
I have a quick example that just came to mind, that last year with the pandemic, so a lot of people were unprepared for teaching online. And last year we hired one of our alumni to the educational technologist position. So I saw that people were panicking. And so I partnered with her to provide adult education sessions on teaching online without sort of them not knowing exactly. But we did that several sessions during the summer to prepare before summer, and also during the summer to prepare for fall. And we end up moving that to teaching K-12 teachers too. This is all adult education. One way is to have presence and to be able to show what we can do. And I think it changes the visibility of the program and what people can do with the degree. Of course, I didn't get paid for but I felt it was my obligation to do it and to help out. With the K-12, then I got paid for that one, but K-12 teachers training. But it was, sometimes you have to do things voluntary to be visible and people understand what the adult education is about.
Steve, I would like to just change directions for a quick minute because I don't want
Sure.
to miss this point,
Sure.
because it relates to both sustainability and to growth. And Simone touched upon it a little bit when she mentioned alumni. So one of the things we did have with my program when it was very active was an advisory board. And so that advisory board, not only did it consist of alumni, but it consisted of professionals in the community as well. And so, for example, the vice president for human resources at one of the major health organizations in St. Louis just happens to be one of my former classmates from the University of Georgia. And so, you know, he would be someone that I would invite to serve on this advisory board, because I think it's important to have those people who are on the ground to help us know, so what are the latest trends? You know, what are some courses in that we need to think about offering that might be helpful in with our recruitment, for example. And when that committee was very active, we had actually come up with some certificate ideas, which I thought would have been very fruitful at the time, but the dean at the time just was not open to that. But I just wanted to emphasize that having an advisory board that could be all alumni or could be alumni and other people in the community, that could be a way to help sustain your program and also to build it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Paulette. And actually, that's a good segue to the next question that we had, which was we talked a little bit about enrollment management from the what I see as all of you have mentioned, kind of like the first steps, which are making sure you understand who your learners are, so you can provide, whether it's a degree program or a credential or a course or something. Whether it's a 14-week course or a shorter course, all of you have talked about, you know, understanding the needs of the learners. So, after that step, what have you learned, or what can you share about the process of marketing and getting students in your programs? You know, so you've done the work to see what they need. Okay, how do you go about and recruit students? So any comments on that?
Yeah, something else I'll add with that is, interestingly, I submitted a proposal to the Dean of the College of Education last year, which she has yet to respond to. But nonetheless, one of the things that I put in that proposal was going to chambers of commerce and chambers of, what is it called? I'm drawing a blank now. I guess, yeah, Chamber of Commerce, and giving presentations there. At our university, we have Express Scripts right next door. So, you know, going there and giving presentations to individuals, but, you know, think about the different places where you can give presentations, set up booths. And somebody who I think is really good at this is Ruby Kane from Ball State. You may notice at AAACE, she always has a booth. AERC, she has a booth. But, you know, thinking about those different places, and I even learned in talking to her that she even attends the Black Expo in Indiana, and she recruits at that Black Expo. So again, it's kind of thinking, like Leanne said, thinking outside the box, if you will, about different places where you can go and recruit, and not just having this myopic view about recruitment and where we can recruit.
A few things that I can add to Paulette's great ideas as well. So we're in partnership with ATD and the local chapters of what is it? Used to be ASTD, and now it's ATD, which is the Association of Talent Development. But basically, we are doing presentations, and we decided to do a small sponsorship for the one in Austin. And so that's a possibility as well. We have found that conference booths have not been as productive as we would like. So I don't know, I'm sure it depends on the conference, you know, where you're going and who you're trying to reach out to, but that's kind of been hit or miss for us. But we have done extensive alumni email campaigns, because people who come into adult ed are from all kinds of disciplines. So we end up getting listservs or lists of our alums at Texas State from the last, you know, whatever it is, 5 or 10 years. And we put out extensive campaigns for recruitment into our grad programs. You know, I think that it's really a good idea, if you haven't been recently, to really look really critically at your web pages to see that they are structured for prospective students as much as anything else. because it's those folks who are going to those web pages. We have some pages that are really for us, and there are some pages that are for current students. But frankly, the rest of those pages need to be really focused on selling the program. And so having that view of your web pages for prospective students, because what we're finding is that the number one way of getting students to learn more about and enroll in and apply and enroll in graduate programs is word of mouth. So those connections with your alumni, your own alumni, your program alumni, and asking them to provide opportunities for presentations about the program, to push out information about the program, little flyers, or you can come and talk with them in a variety of settings. That's been particularly useful. And then the other way that people learn about your program is coming to your webpage. So your web pages. So be prepared to always have that front-facing look of your web pages closely connected to what prospective students would want. We've used LinkedIn. We have advertised on we have a Facebook page, we have a LinkedIn page that have been valuable. I don't know how much of a return on investment we're getting from that, but it's, you know, it helps keep us networked, which has really been valuable. And I think that, you know, information sessions, I think that programs should be what I'm recommending to our programs in the College of Education across the board are that they have at least one virtual information session that they provide and that they also record and then have available very easily on their web pages about the program, and do this every semester, at least every long semester, to keep it updated. And then in terms of yield management, once you've got students who are applying and then actually decide to enroll, but then don't come back, there's a lot of melt over what's called enrollment melt over the summer. And particularly through pandemic situations, because people are worried about money, they're worried about time, you know, they're freaking out about the pandemic and the experience and the online stuff. Personalization and connection with faculty is the number one thing that graduate students want. They want that connection with their faculty and their programs. And they want to know that not only do we care about them, but also that we understand their needs. So one of the things that I think coordinators need to know about, but I didn't know about for a long time, was financial aid. Like I was like, oh, financial aid can work with that. I need to be able to help them as a coordinator. I would need to help them navigate those systems at times, about scholarships, about resources, about when registration is, when tuition is due. You know, yes, they're adults, but frankly, they are busy. And this is our work to help them to feel more connected to our programs and more supported.
So we also do similar things, social media, info sessions, but one thing we have discovered that's very helpful, since we have an adult continuing and higher education, we have started creating partnerships with campus, you know, trying to recruit students from campus, because what they are doing is adult education in higher education. So we created a list of people on campus in positions that would gain skills from our program, and we can tell if they have a master's degree or a PhD, and we send out messages, flyers regarding our info sessions. So we got a lot of people from campus. And lately we have created a partnership with Student Affairs to create job opportunities, because they were offering job opportunities outside the university to higher education programs. And we were like, why aren't you offering to us? And they didn't know this was happening. So now we're going to gain priority. We're creating a process to, you know, offer those positions to our students. We have listservs. We send messages about jobs to students. We have a Chancellor's Award that used to be specific to PhD students. Now we are expanding that to master's students, because sometimes they don't come to us because they don't have the full money. They will go somebody else because they got an assistantship. So we are trying to sort of strategize how we can maintain them too, because it's not just to recruit, to retain them, and to recruit new students. So those are all the strategies we use, and we've been expanding our different possibilities. And of course, we have the alumni task force, another way, and they help us during our info sessions. They come to our info sessions and they talk about the program and the jobs they have now because of the program. So creating stories on our social media where they video stories, they can talk about who they are, what they are doing and what the program did for them. It's also very personal and helpful for us.
As a final question in the chat, can you comment on to what extent your program is offering adult-oriented community learning certificates at the undergraduate and graduate levels, focusing on community building, community development, or are there other certificates that you're emphasizing more, but specifically on that one?
We have one, it's a master's
That
program
we
that is
wanted to
on-
look at. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Paula.
I was going to say, well, one of the things we wanted to look at when our program was a little active was a health literacy certificate and also a general literacy certificate as well. And there's a third one too, but I'm drawing a blank. But I think, yes, offering those certificates is a really good idea. And then one of the things my institution did, it used to be that for a certificate, it was 18 hours. But now I believe they have reduced that to either 12 or 15. They just realized requiring 18 hours is just way too much. And so again, they have reduced the number of hours, but those were two certificates that we had thought about some years ago.
I'll just add that we currently have one, a certificate, a graduate certificate in adult ESL, EFL teaching, which also can roll itself into the concentration, which is called the same thing, and get a full master's. We have someone on faculty who's very, very strong in that, and I've done some of that work too. So, but that's based on what faculty interest was at the time when we put this in place. We do have problems. We're not allowed as a university to add any more certificates. That's going to have to change. But the reason they had stopped those is that in the state of Texas, financial aid is not provided for graduate certificates. So we have some, we have some of those barriers, but now we're hearing about badges as well as certificates, and these are things that are really helpful on resumes and in terms of getting the kinds of work people want and can offer particular skills. So I think that that's going to have to change. So I think this is a good question.
So one way our students go by the certificate, because they can't get financial aid, is that they will apply for the master's and the certificate, and then they will do the certificate, but then sometimes they will say, oh, I already did half of it. Why can't I do another half and get a master's? So it's also a recruitment strategy, but then they can get the financial aid. Mm-hmm. It's their choice to stay in the master's or just finish the certificate.
I would agree. Those are similar to the things we're doing. I'm trying to think kind of directly of this question. I think it's very smart to be looking for other things besides just here are some graduate courses. Like that takes out a good chunk of a huge percentage of the population who has the interest, the time, the ability, the money, right? So looking more at what are these community needs? How can we as adult educators fill those community needs? Does that mean we completely change who we are? No, not necessarily, but maybe these are things that are developed and then our graduate students become the ones to, to have that experience teaching more in these kind of badging or micro credentialing sort of situations that really fulfill something that, a need that we happen to see. So thinking beyond just, you have to fit into what we already offer, even if we tweak it a little bit, within our programs, and expanding that beyond. I could be reading the question wrong, but that's kind of how I interpreted it. So I am saying that I don't have anything, we don't have anything like that, but I think it is incredibly important and something that adult education should look towards.
And I think there is one topic that maybe it's for the follow-up. And how can adult ed become more entrepreneurial? Like, how can we create apps that teach people? How can we become part of the NSF I-Corps? I was part of that last year. It's a lot of work, but that's an area that we haven't been doing much, but maybe some people have and we don't know. We need to hear from them. So maybe that's a future topic of conversation. Because
sounds like a future idea for you, Simone, in your new world of retirement.
Potentially, yes, definitely.
Well, I think we're about at the end of our session. This has been a great conversation. This is exactly what we were hoping for, to start talking about these issues of growth and sustainability. I'd like to thank Steve Schmitz, Simone Conceição, Joellen Coriel, Paulette Isaac Savage, and Leanne Kaiser for contributing to this conversation. Jelena has a post in the chat to remind everybody about, we're going to be working also in a virtual form. I'd like to thank Jelena, as well as Rachel Wlodarski, who has been doing work on this online forum on the AAACE site. So please look for that announcement about how you can become involved in that virtual session. The Commission for Professors of Adult Education will also have a meeting in Adult Education in Global Times at the Vancouver conference that will be held virtually this year. Please do stay connected with us at CPAE and the executive committee so that we can continue to have these conversations. And there's some good ideas here that can kind of spur the thoughts for the next program that we'll have. So thank you very much. Be well, everybody, and have a good
remember the conference in October too, because we'll continue the conversation there for sure.
Absolutely. So AAACE, that's, past the summer, but the enrollment or the registration is starting already for that. The reviews for proposals are happening. So our annual conference for AAACE will be held then as well in Florida, face-to-face this year. So we can go to that wine evening that Joellen was talking about. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.